Hey, y'all. How are you doing? I am great. Thank you so much for asking. It's me, Kim, and I'm back. Hi. Happy July 4th. Before we jump into it, I just want to offer a little PSA. COVID is still real. Someone I know very closely, I won't say who, did test positive for COVID yesterday. COVID is still real, it's still a thing. So move accordingly. But we are here this July 4th to talk about some, hi, to talk about some politics stuff. Okay. Let me put on my serious Kimberly voice. We are going to talk about the Democratic Party's current catastrophe and the future of politics in the United States. I really felt compelled to go deep on this because I am still seeing too much dishonesty from people who I know to be really well meaning about how deeply damaged a candidate Joe Biden is. A week ago, last Thursday, President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump had their first presidential debate. And the result was an embarrassing, dispiriting mess. After about 5 or 10 minutes, I was watching. I could not watch it anymore. I turned it off. I turned it on. I called my boyfriend, turned it off and turned it on. He said, "Oh, this is too hard. I can't watch it anymore." It was disturbing. Um, and it made me really sad, not just for Joe Biden, because honestly, he did look confused and he did look dispirited at the end, but also for the future of our country. Because I understood how bad a position Biden was going into that debate. I'm going to start by putting some numbers on the table because, again, I am worried that the Democratic Party fanatics, aka stands, are not in touch with reality. Every source that I'm going to reference here is going to be, yeah, like give me the mic. I see you, JoJo. Every source I reference here is going to be linked in the description bar below. Let's start. Right now, Joe Biden's approval rating is 37%, though I did see a report, a write-up in the New York Times today where Nate Cohn, a statistician, a pollster for New York Times Siena, said it's 36%. So let's just say it's between 36 and 37%. That is a horrible number. It is a horrific number. It's a number about as bad as it ever got for LBJ during the worst parts of the Vietnam War. It is a number almost as bad as it ever got for Jimmy Carter, George H.W. Bush. Well, actually, I think it's worse than George H.W. Bush. Uh, Donald Trump got a little bit lower at the end or near the end of their terms. A 37% approval rating is a catastrophe. It is an emergency. This is a graph from 538. As you can see, over time, Biden's approval rating has fallen off the cliff. So let's remember the people who I referenced earlier: LBJ, Jimmy Carter, George H.W. Bush, and Donald Trump were all one-term presidents. Now, to be fair, LBJ was not elected and he chose not to run again, but that was in large part because he saw how the presidency was going for him. He saw the catastrophe of the Vietnam War. He called the presidency a cage, a jail. So he was either going to be forced out or he was going to resign. But it was bad, okay? So, as I've said, the precedent for sitting presidents who have approval ratings in the 30s is not good. And by the way, Gaza did not do it. As you can see from this graph, the favorability, the approval rating was already cratering before October of 2023. So let's just go generally to favorability. Okay. Currently, Joe Biden has a lower favorability than Donald Trump. These graphs are also from 538. According to Gallup, it hasn't always been this way. Right after the election in 2020, Biden's favorability was 55%, while Trump's favorability was 42%. So it makes perfect sense that voters would opt for Biden. People just liked him more. But despite that significant gap in favorability, the margins of Joe Biden's win in November 2020 were actually much smaller than the statisticians, the pollsters predicted. But he got it out, right? Like, he still did it. It happened. But again, think about how his favorability has cratered. Okay, let's move on. In addition to Biden's approval rating and favorability rating cratering over the last couple of years, Gallup also says that Democratic Party identification has decreased since Joe Biden has been in office. It's now at a record low of 27%. Now, we are in an exceptionally polarized time. So the cratering of the party identification, the divergence, the explosion of independent party identification is to be expected, but it's just something to think about here. Okay. If you've heard that Biden supporters of all stripes, from the staunchest, hardest partisans to the political journalists, to the New York Times people, the Washington Post people, the former Obama aides, if you have heard that those people are freaking out after that debate, it's because they see in all of the data that we have that Joe Biden is behind in the polls and there is no indication that he can recover. Empirically, Democrats are in a much worse place now than they were in both 2016 and 2020. This time in 2016, Clinton was ahead of Trump. Now, the pollsters had to go back and say, "Ooh, we undercounted. Our methodology systematically undercounted the Trump voters, so we're going to have to adjust it." They have subsequently made their adjustments, but also in 2020, Joe Biden was ahead as well. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so these are the polling averages from 2020, and we're comparing them to the polling averages in 2024. Obviously, I made this little graphic a couple of days ago, but you can see there's some big swings. Some big swings, and those swings should inspire deep concern. I made that graphic Tuesday before I saw the Puck News report that polling from the highly trusted Democratic research firm Open Labs indicates Biden's numbers are now even worse in swing states. Sorry, I need to make this big so I can read this because this is important. This is reporting from Peter Hanby in Puck News, published July 2nd, 2024. In their survey of key electoral college states where voters are paying closer attention to the campaign, Biden is doing noticeably worse. The president has fallen by around 2 points in every single core battleground, and also in states that were not even on the 2024 map last week. In the tipping point state of Pennsylvania, Biden now trails by 7 points compared to 5 points before the debate. He is also dropped in Michigan, where he now trails by 7. Open Labs also found that he is now losing by roughly 10 points in Georgia and Arizona, and by almost 9 points in Nevada. Biden is now only winning by a fraction of a point in Virginia, Maine, Minnesota, and New Mexico. And he's now only winning Colorado by around 2 points. Now, going back to that end, Virginia, Maine, Minnesota, and New Mexico were never considered to be on the table. Those are states considered to be solidly Democratic, reliably Democratic in every other context, except for in a Biden Trump matchup. Okay, let me go back to my notes. Mm. Okay, so yes, that should definitely inspire concern. But I do want to be perfectly fair. Nathaniel Rakich of 538 says essentially that polls that are within 3 points of each other, when those polling averages are within 3 points, that's within the margin of error, and they're essentially a toss-up. But as I mentioned, there is new polling coming out of New York Times, Siena College. There's a poll write-up of this in the New York Times by Nate Cohn. And they are now saying that post that debate, that Trump's polling lead is now larger than the margin of error. Now, this is really distressing for a number of reasons. When you listen to professional political consultants or journalists or politicos or political scientists, they all agree that on paper, Joe Biden should be doing much better. But despite his best efforts, those polls are not moving. They have been stagnant for a year and a half. Now, that stagnation has been pretty good for the country because, in an effort to move those polls, Joe Biden has come out really strong for some really good policy. I'm not arguing that the Biden administration's policies are bad. No. No, they're actually quite good. And we can go off another time on how Joe Biden actually ended up being the more progressive Democratic presidents of the modern era. We don't have time for that. I am arguing that as a candidate, as a major party nominee, he is uniquely damaged, and damaged in a way that puts our democracy at risk. Okay. So after the CHIPS Act, after the infrastructure bill, after the Inflation Reduction Act, we're still in the 30s. And the pollsters and the journalists and the political scientists are saying this is not adding up. Could it be that 3/4 of registered voters say that Joe Biden is too old to be running for president? And thus they are reacting negatively to him because they don't think that he can effectively do the job no matter what policy gets pushed through? Seems like it. Okay. And it seems like it because the Biden campaign has long known that age has been a huge concern for voters. That's why way back in 2019, before he was the presumptive nominee, he would have his advisors and aides say things to the press on background. There is an article that was written up in Politico from December 2019. It's by Ryan Lizza. The title is Biden Signals to Aides That He Would Only Serve a Single Term. Here's a quote from the story. If Biden is elected, a prominent advisor to the campaign said, he's going to be 82 years old in 4 years, and he won't be running for re-election. That's December 2019. Now, that narrative did not last long because by March 2020, when he was really the presumptive nominee, this is after the sweep in South Carolina, he stood on stage at a campaign event with Gen X Democratic politicians and said, look, I view myself as a bridge, not as anything else. There's an entire generation of leaders you saw stand behind me. They are the future of this country. So, those of us who have age concerns are not crazy. The Biden campaign for years has intimated that he would be a transition figure, that he would be a bridge. Now, he stopped explicitly saying, I will not run in 2024. But certainly, when people were sending in their ballots in the middle of the pandemic in 2020, there was an idea of this is a stopgap measure. Okay. This is not forever. And that's really important. Um, so there's this shows up in all kinds of polling, but I'm going to reference an Ipsos poll here. So, right now, Americans are saying that the most important issues to them are immigration and the economy. Americans are also saying that they believe that Donald Trump is the candidate who is most capable of addressing those concerns. Add that to all of the other horrific data we have around Biden, it's looking really bad. The other thing I want to say is I talked about that Open Labs leak, which again is from within the Democratic Party, right? It's really clear now that Democratic Party insiders are leaking things to the press in ways that they would not have done before because they also view Biden as a uniquely damaged candidate. But that report also said that in addition to his horrible debate performance opening him up to new vulnerabilities in previously safe states, that when they do new matchups with younger candidates like Whitmer Trump or Buttigieg Trump or Harris Trump, that those people do better against Trump than Biden is currently doing. Now, that was not previously the case. Now, there's all sorts of ideas about why that's now the case. Now that we're having all of these really open, honest conversations about how deeply damaged a candidate Joe Biden is, people are looking into relatively unknown faces like Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, whom everybody seems to love. She gave a great interview to the New York Times if you want to look at that. People are now looking into Wes Moore, the very charismatic, accomplished governor of Maryland, even though he might be a little new. People were already familiar with Buttigieg, but they're like, hey, that Secretary of Transportation, he might be able to slide on in there. And they're also reconsidering Kamala Harris. Now, that is a big deal because since forever, Kamala Harris has had a worse approval rating than Joe Biden. It was lower 30s and well, it was like 37% or something and Joe Biden was maybe 38, 39. Now Kamala is 39 and Joe Biden is 36, 37. So even the anti-DEI racist, right? Right? The fuck Kamala DEI racists are like, hey, it might not be so bad. I'm just kidding. I'm not a pro Kamala person either. You don't have to be a racist anti DEI person to see Kamala's unique damage as a candidate. All right, let's move on. So, the other thing that people who love democracy and freedom and civil rights really have to think about as we're moving forward is what happens if Donald Trump, lying Donald Trump, also probably cognitively challenged Donald Trump. What happens if he chooses a great running mate and there's an incredible reaction to his running mate? And then they get all of this momentum going into the Republican National Convention. So that's where we are. I am begging you, lovers of democracy, please don't tell me the data doesn't matter. Don't tell me that this is all fake. You don't believe it. We are not in a position to be delusional. We have to have some hard conversations. We have to be really honest. because there's no time to fuck around. Um, but all this information has been evident for a long time. I would like to point out another edition of Kimberly has unpopular opinions that are quite frequently, though not always, right. I do remember earlier this year getting dragged when I said, hey, Joe Biden, not doing great cognitively, probably should not be running. Because even then, it was apparent there are some issues. Now, since then, there's more reporting, more leaks that Joe Biden's condition and his ability to do the job have deteriorated rather quickly over the last 6 months. But anybody who was paying attention could see it. So I did get dragged by every Democratic shill and their mother. People for days on end. How dare you? My grandma has Alzheimer's. Okay. Okay. I'm Black. You know that Black people are actually more likely to experience dementia and cognitive decline and Alzheimer's. If you are a Black person, you actually very likely know an elder who has experienced some form of dementia. Please, that's really not the point. Back in February, Ezra Klein, from his post at the esteemed New York Times, he also said Joe Biden should withdraw from the race because he was not up to the challenge of stumping for president. And all kinds of people came for him as well. David Ignatius said the same thing at the Washington Post. He was laughed at. I saw all kinds of those cable news shows coming for them. But they were right. The party shoved Biden down Democratic leaning voters' throats, and the electorate refuses to swallow. There was no indication that the electorate was ever going to swallow. Not to mention how often we're seeing now vulnerable executives get swept up in this anti incumbent mood globally. Look at what's happening in the UK. Shout out to the Labour Party. Shout out to Keir Starmer. Okay, well, we don't have time to get into that. But also, look at what's happening in France. Baby, Emmanuel Macron, count your fucking days. I, we, we don't. Biden's candidacy has looked bad for a long time. Now it just looks worse. Let's keep it moving.
To make fundamental changes in civil rights. And those civil rights, by the way, include not just only African Americans, but the LGBT community.
He wants to get rid of the ability of Medicare
I did not oppose busing in America. What I opposed is busing ordered by the Department of Education. That's what I oppose.
Making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if
you will determine the outcome of this election, vote. Vote, vote. If you're able to vote early in your state, vote early. If you're able to vote in person, vote in person. Vote whatever way is the best way for you, because he cannot stop you.
And I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look.
Sides. What American president would ever say Nazis coming out of fields carrying torches, singing the same anti-Semitic bile, carrying swastikas were fine people? This is the guy who says Hitler's done some good things.
I want to underscore that there is no shame in aging. There is no shame in experiencing cognitive decline. Almost 1 in 3 people over 80 has some kind of dementia. That's not really the point. What we're discussing here is whether or not the people that we are being expected to rally around, whether or not the person who says that he is the stopgap between us and a fascist future, does he have the capacity to bring in swing voters, to continue going hard on the stump every single day and win the election when he is currently polling behind? That is the question. And there are so many problems right now with Biden's very clear deterioration. That is not a man who has the capacity to travel the country every single day at 81 years old. That is not a person who has the capacity to communicate to people who are on the fence that he is capable of answering the phone at 3 o'clock in the morning and making life or death decisions. It's just not there. All right, let's move on to the next thing. Biden's aides understand that. Okay, so right after the debate, the leaks started leaking. This is what Biden's closest aide leaked to Axios. They've said, between the lines, Biden's miscues and limitations are more familiar inside the White House. The time of day is important as to which of the two Bidens will appear. From 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., Biden is dependably engaged, and many of his public events in front of the camera are held within those hours. Outside of that time range or while traveling abroad, Biden is more likely to have verbal miscues and become fatigued, aides told Axios. That's from Alex Thompson to Joe Biden's The Night America Saw the Other One, published June 29th, 2024. If lucidity is conditional, if engagement is conditional, you can't do this job. It's not even an option. And after that debate, the response was horrible. The flash polls were awful. Let's take a look. Okay, so this is, does Joe Biden have the mental and cognitive health to serve as president? 27% said that he does, 72% says he does not. With Trump, 50% say that he does, 49% say he does not. Next, at the debate, which candidate presented ideas clearly? 21% said Biden did, 47% said Trump did. 28% said Biden appeared presidential. 46% of viewers said Trump appeared presidential. 18% of viewers of the debate said Biden inspired confidence. 44% of viewers of the debate said Trump inspired confidence. 21% of debate viewers said that Biden explained plans and policies well. Oh, 35%, yes. And 43% said Trump explained his plans and policies well. That's really bad. I also listened to longtime pollster Frank Luntz talk about his poll with swing voters and how horribly that went. We're going to play a clip from Frank Luntz. I'm going to say that before, Frank Luntz and his toupee were very right wing. He has moved more toward the center in his polling, but still, he's an expert. He's done this for a long time. We can listen to him.
A question for you. Once your focus group was over, what was the result of the focus group? Did it change anyone's minds? Did anyone land on a candidate?
Yes, they did. I don't know if you're asking because you actually want to know or you're asking because you do know and you want me to say it. 12 of the 14 moved towards Donald Trump. One of the 14 moved towards Joe Biden and one stayed undecided. I have never in my professional life had such an overwhelming result to a presidential debate, to a general election presidential debate. It was absolutely incredible. And person after person talked about how much they regretted it, or talked about how they liked Joe Biden at one point, or talked about how they disliked how Trump behaved. And then they said, but I can't get away from what Joe Biden, his performance. I can't get away from how much trouble he had articulated where he stood. And I got to tell you something. I did not see it in.
So that's a big deal. We have reached a crossroads. The Democratic Party needs to publicly and privately be encouraging, compelling, dare I say, coercing Joe Biden to withdraw from this race so that somebody else can become the nominee. That is the point. There is no path forward. There's no path forward now because you've probably never seen a June debate for the general election. It's never happened before. One of the reasons, well, the reason the Biden campaign wanted to schedule a June election, they fought for it, they brought Donald Trump in, is because they thought that a debate would draw attention and also create momentum for a campaign that is dead. It definitely drew attention, but it had the exact opposite effect. Now, admittedly, the next day he got back on the stump and he did look stronger. So we can take a look at this.
I don't walk as easy as I used to. I don't speak as smoothly as I used to. I don't debate as well as I used to. But I know what I do know. I know how to tell the truth. I know right from wrong. And I know how to do this job. I know how to get things done. And I know, like millions of Americans know, when you get knocked down, you get back up.
Line. That last line, you did it, Joe. The last line was good. Now, we had some problems getting into the last line, but much stronger voice, stronger in demeanor, more color to the face, looked much more alive the next morning. But that also aligns with the things that the aides have leaked about the hours during which Joe Biden is capable of being a solid campaigner. So Biden has said that he's going to get back up again. He has carried this underdog theme with him throughout all of these years. You know, in my reading, I found that it goes back to the 80s when Joe Biden in 1987 was forced to drop out of the presidential race because of a plagiarism scandal. And Joe and Jill Biden have had resentment toward the party and have had regret about that moment ever since. But it is a new dawn, a new day. Jill Biden had a disastrously timed American Vogue cover in which, she said really good, honest things about where the country is and where it's going and how afraid we should be of Donald Trump. We should be very afraid of Donald Trump. That is true. After the debate, the journalist, I believe her name is Maya Singer, called Jill Biden back up and said, "What do you want to say? Because we're all talking about the debate now." Jill Biden reiterated Joe's words and said, "We're going to get back up. We're going to keep going." The quote is, "We will not let those 90 minutes define the 4 years he's been president. We will continue to fight." But what does that even mean? There's no indication that the Biden campaign has a clear plan to fight or fight back or do it meaningfully or figure out a way to inspire confidence. There is a roundtable by Politico. It was consultants, politicians, political scientists. Andrew Gillespie, who is associate professor of political science at Emory University, said that one of the immediate things that the Biden campaign needs to do is do a full physical and mental evaluation, release that information publicly, put all of those fears to rest. The Biden campaign came back and said, on background, basically, that they were definitely not going to do it. Though yesterday they did come out, or this is all reporting, right? But yesterday, the reporting came out that said Biden had told the Congress people and the governors that he had been checked out by a doctor after the debate, even though his press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, also said that same day that he had not been seen by a doctor. They're lying. They're lying. Okay. They're lying. Now, Joe Biden has also said that he plans to sit with George Stephanopoulos on ABC News tomorrow, more than a week after the debate. Since then, there have not been any public statements. I listened to Pod Save America, and the Pod Save America men, who were former Obama aides, have gone so hard on this. And I've actually been really surprised by how honest that they've been about this. And one of them, I think it was John Favreau, said, look, if I was working with the candidate and they had that kind of debate performance, I would tell them, go out every single day and say, I'm going to debate tomorrow. I will debate next week. I will debate 4 times next month. I will debate you here, there, everywhere. I will debate you, Sam I Am. Biden is not doing that. Why do you think he's not doing that? He gave a press conference on Monday and afterwards declined to take questions. I don't think that there's anybody who was responsible for prepping Biden for a whole week at Camp David who was particularly surprised by his performance last Thursday. There's no reason. And of course, they weren't surprised because the newer reporting indicates that those kinds of incidents, those kinds of public lapses are pretty common. Let's listen to Carl Bernstein of Woodward and Bernstein fame discuss it on CNN.
Carl, according to the people you've been talking to, what are you hearing?
Well, these are people, several of them, who are very close to President Biden, who love him, have supported him, and been among them are some people who have raised a lot of money for him. And they are adamant that what we saw the other night, the Joe Biden we saw, is not a one-off, that there have been 15, 20 occasions in the last year and a half when the president has appeared somewhat as he did in that horror show that we witnessed. And what's so significant is the people that this is coming from, and also how many people around the president are aware of such incidents, including some reporters, incidentally, who have witnessed some of them. But here we see tonight, as these people say, President Biden at his absolute best, and yet these people who have supported him, loved him, campaigned for him, see him often, say that in the last 6 months particularly, there has been a marked incidence of cognitive decline and physical infirmity.
What I wonder about is the people who were, working with him at Camp David, allegedly in this intensive debate prep, if there were concerns there about this, and I don't know if you have got any word about that, but how anybody involved in that debate prep, didn't anybody see something was amiss?
The debate prep was supervised by Ron Klain, who has been with President Biden for many years. And people I've talked to have all been to Ron Klain in the last year to say, we have a problem. We have a problem.
Now, another reason why we are seeing or hearing more and more of these leaks is because there is a growing concern that Biden remaining at the top of the ticket will drag down the party as a whole. that if there is not enthusiasm around voting for Biden, if people are actually turned off for voting for the Democratic presidential nominee, that everybody under him is also going to suffer. Now, Democrats generally are not unpopular. That red wave that was supposed to happen in 2022 didn't happen. Democrats did great. And they could continue that momentum, save the House, maybe keep that slim Senate majority, maybe not, right? Like, Senate's gone, right? If there is a strong presidential candidate. And I do think that as the Congress people assess the numbers and as their own well-being begins to be imperiled, especially in the House, that we're going to get more and more leaks and more people coming out to say, look, the presidency is gone, but we can at least have the House because unified Republican government under a fascist is a true nightmare. Okay. There's no reason to believe that Biden is going to make it the next 4 months without self-destructing again. There's certainly no reason to believe he's going to make it to 2028. That's out of the realm of possibility. On July 2nd, the New York Times published, quote, Biden's lapses are said to be increasingly common and worrisome. Now we have suddenly all these people coming out on background. They can't have their names attached to it, but they're saying that Biden's cognitive decline and decrepitude are more and more evident, that they would not trust him in a room alone with Vladimir Putin, that they have to be careful about the way that they present information to him because he often reacts very negatively when he is being briefed. Okay. I also think this idea that Joe Biden is like the scrappy man from Scranton, Pennsylvania. I hate that framing. I understand the framing because, as I mentioned earlier, globally there is an anti-incumbent, anti-elite mood. And it does help Joe Biden politically to embrace the idea that he is some kind of outsider, but he is not an outsider. He is very literally the most powerful person in the country and one of the most powerful people in the world. It's not gonna work. The other thing I want to say about the Biden thing and why it is so imperative for Joe Biden to withdraw and allow somebody else to be at the top of the ticket before the Democratic National Convention in August is this issue that we're seeing with his deficits is not just a campaigning issue. It's also a governance issue. So let's go back to our American history. We can put on our intro to political science glasses. At the early 20th century, Theodore Roosevelt, good old Teddy, he coined the term the bully pulpit to describe the platform that the presidency presents for somebody who wants to use the presidency to advocate, quote unquote, progressive issues. And when Teddy, TR, as the historians like to call him, shout out to Doris Kearns Goodwin. Doris Kearns Goodwin is the Theodore Roosevelt biographer. Bully does not mean aggressive or dominant. He just used bully as great. So the bully pulpit is the president has a unique opportunity to use all of the attention and power that is imbued into the executive to speak out to the American people, to reach out to the public and say, this is a really important issue. This is a really important policy. This is why we have to get behind it. This is the kind of change that it's going to make in the country. You can only do that if you have the capability to effectively convey ideas. Moreover, you have to be able to effectively convey those ideas extemporaneously. If you can't do that, you can't be president. And I don't know why. Well, I do know why, because honestly, people are scared and desperate. But look, that has been the case for over 100 years. We expect the president to be able to stand in front of the country and say, this is my vision for America. This is why it's important. This is why you have to compel your congresspeople to act right now. And he has to be able to do it consistently, reliably, every single time. That's the standard now. It's going to be the standard moving forward. That is one of the reasons why, after a debate, you see those flash polls looking like that, because that's what people expect. Okay. So that was true in TR's days when he actually had a really good relationship with the media. There was a real strong symbiosis between the presidency and the quote unquote progressive media, the yellow journalists of their time, like McClure magazine. He had a great relationship, and they worked together to create the conditions in the United States where all of these new progressive policies could be pushed forward. Now, as I mentioned before, Joe Biden has actually done, I don't think Joe Biden gets enough credit for the policy. I have to tell you guys, and people said, "Are you a Trumper?" I'm not a Trumper. I'm about to go out here for Joe Biden right now. Joe Biden is the first president in history to ever walk with a union. The relationship that Joe Biden has with unions is unprecedented. The work that he has done on behalf of strengthening unions and low wage workers is unprecedented. The reason why you don't know that is because Biden does not have the ability to tell America. The reason why we don't know all of the stuff that Joe Biden has done on behalf of low wage Americans is because we are only talking about the affordability crisis because you cede the conversation to conservatives if you can't get out in public and advocate for the things that you are doing every single day. We are talking about the Biden administration and their policy goals and their accomplishments in a completely right-wing frame because he's over relying on surrogates. So, if we can just get somebody else to pick up the football, pick up the ball, keep running. You have to be able to clearly and effectively articulate your ideas, or you're going to have a weak presidency. Now, unfortunately for Joe Biden, that debate was his Wizard of Oz moment. That was when Toto knocked down the screen and revealed the wizard to the people who only casually engage with politics. But I don't think any insider, anybody who really follows closely, was caught off guard. And I believe that in large part because, in really trying to read up on this and how we got here, it's really clear to me that the Biden White House has worked to intentionally obstruct the press from getting close to Joe Biden consistently. And I also believe that Biden's aides have planted stories in major journalistic institutions that are clearly false. Let's take a look. Okay, so here we are here. There's some really good graphs here about how Biden avoids the press. Let's Okay. We can look at his average news conferences. Fewer formal press events from Biden. Right. Yeah. Now, I'm fair. Joe Biden is old, and for the first year or so of his presidency, it's pretty reasonable to say, oh, he might have been insulated because we were still in a really crazy COVID environment. But the landscape for his engagement with the press, the amount of time that he spends really going deep with the press has not significantly changed. Like, if the CDC can say that you don't have to stay home and isolate anymore, then you need to be doing some press conferences. Joe Biden is the only president who has not done a long form sit down interview with a major newspaper or magazine. He just refuses to do it. In fact, he over relies on softball interviews with celebrities and influencers. There's some really good stuff here that I wanted to talk about. Let's get to I'm just going to read a couple of quotes, okay? So this is from Night and Day, the Biden administration in the press from an organization called the Committee to Protect Journalists, published January 13th, 2022. It reads, one key concern among White House reporters is their limited access to Biden. He has given far fewer press conferences and media interviews than either Barack Obama or Donald Trump in their first year in office. And he has responded to fewer impromptu questions from reporters at White House or public events. Biden held just one full scale solo press conference at the White House and 4 on foreign trips during his first year in office, according to authoritative records kept by political scientist Martha Kumar, director of the White House Transition Project during several administrations. By Kumar's count, Biden has given just 22 interviews as president to members of the news media by the end of 2021, a fraction of the 92 Trump had done or the 150 that Obama had done during the same period in their presidencies. Biden relies more on prepared remarks that he has read on television from a teleprompter, taking few or no questions from reporters kept some distance away. Behind the teleprompter and the cameras, if he doesn't want to take more or any questions. Associated Press White House correspondent Zeke Miller told me he'll turn around and walk away. While President Biden has taken questions more often at his events than his predecessors, he spends less time doing so, Kumar said. Quote, he provides short answers with few follow-ups when he takes questions at the end of a previously scheduled speech. He often takes 1 or 2 questions while his predecessors took more queries at fewer events. Okay, so that's one thing. There's a follow-up published in the New York Times in April 2023 titled, Biden has held the fewest news conferences since Reagan. Any questions? And it reads, quote, traveling in Ireland last week, President Biden abandoned the decades-old tradition of holding a news conference while abroad. On Thursday, President Gustavo Petro of Colombia met with Mr. Biden, but the two did not hold a news conference together, another practice of his predecessors that Mr. Biden has frequently chosen to skip. After the meeting, Mr. Petro took questions from reporters alone, at microphones in front of the West Wing. And despite his press secretary pledging that Mr. Biden would, quote, bring transparency and truth back to government in his first 2 years, the president granted the fewest interviews since Mr. Reagan's presidency. Now, we should note that Reagan gave fewer because he got shot and was incapacitated, but we can keep going. Donald Trump gave 202 during the first 2 years of his presidency. Barack Obama gave 275. More than any president in recent memory, Mr. Biden, 80, has taken steps to reduce opportunities for journalists to question him in forums where he can offer unscripted answers and they can follow up. The result, critics say, is a president who has fewer moments of public accountability for his comments, decisions, and actions. Okay. Now, let's move on to October 17th, 2023. The Washington Post published, Biden gives fewer press interviews, but he woos more influencers. Now, we'll just read the intro here. In his first 2.5 years as president, Biden has held fewer news conferences than his predecessors. He has given fewer interviews to major news organizations, despite his promise to restore traditional press relations after the Donald Trump era. At the same time, the White House is contacting an array of online influencers, social media personalities, TikTok stars, and other non traditional figures to spread its message, creating an alternative communication network that is different from previous presidencies. Now, if he were opening himself up to a rigorous journalistic interview and working with influencers, there's no problem with that. But if we're supplanting exposure to the public via influencers and celebrities with a sit down with the Wall Street Journal, that is a problem. It's also really interesting. I'm sorry, I find it to be very interesting that while Joe Biden has endorsed a TikTok ban, he has simultaneously used the platforms of TikTokers to bypass speaking to traditional press. I think that's really interesting. I have long had questions about the reasons given for why we have to ban TikTok or force the Chinese to sell TikTok. I'm not saying that those security concerns are non existent. I am saying that, look, when did the Biden administration learn about the security concerns? Did they suddenly learn that TikTok presents a grave threat to national security before or after he spent months and months hooking up with TikTokers to spread, honestly, propaganda on TikTok? I just find that to be really fascinating. It's one thing when Beyonce does it, it is another thing when the leader of the free world does it. And, you know, all this to say that while the Biden administration has said that they want to normalize press relations, they are almost as petty as the Trump administration was. There was a huge back and forth between the Biden White House and the New York Times. And actually, I want to read, this will be the last thing. We'll read a statement from Charlie Statlander, a spokesperson for the Times, because I think that this is really important. One of the reasons why the mainstream news media is often referred to as the fourth estate is because we expect them to occupy a position of consistently questioning and holding the government accountable. That these institutions that mediate so much of our lives cannot just be allowed to do whatever and not have to answer questions about the decisions that they're making or why they're making them. So, this is good. Statler said in his statement, it is true that the Times has sought an on the record interview with President Biden, as it has done with all presidents going back more than a century. If the president chooses not to sit down with the Times because he dislikes our independent coverage, that's his right. And we will continue to cover him fully and fairly either way, Statler added. For anyone who understands the role of the free press in a democracy, it should be troubling that the president has so actively and effectively avoided questions from independent journalists over the course of his term. The president occupies the most important office in our nation, and the press plays a vital role in providing insights into his thinking and worldview, allowing the public to assess the president's record and to hold him to account. Anyways, the reason why this is such a big deal now, I may be on a little delay. The other thing that I find to be deeply concerning about the way that Biden avoids the press, avoids long, unstructured press conferences, does not want to sit down, utilizes influencers and celebrities so much, only does these, short back and forth Q&As. So the reason why, if you look on those graphs, there's a whole bunch of informal Q&As. The thing about informal Q&As is they're not always done by the president, and those informal Q&As are often people shouting out questions at Joe Biden as he is walking to Marine One or as he's walking to Air Force One, and he can just not answer. He can just ignore them. Okay. But the reason why, as a lover of democracy, this is such a big deal is because look around the world. Look at the way that the fascists are so quickly gaining power. One of the ways that they operate is by running to the press. Marine Le Pen, okay, and Jordan Bardella in France are not running away from the press. Okay, if Le Monde calls or whatever other French newspaper, if they call, Jordan Bardella is sitting down for a long form interview because they understand that the way that they spread their message is through communication. That visibility is the way that they spread their message. They gain notoriety, they gain legitimacy via the mainstream news media. If the lovers of democracy cannot meet them there, what are we doing? Okay. So I get why people want to blame the media for this situation that we are in with Joe Biden. It's a mixed bag because there is some very brown nosing media, but there has also been media that has consistently pushed Joe Biden and is really trying to ask tough questions and hold him to account. And that is why the Biden administration, being notoriously petty, moves the way that they move with them. It's not exactly Trumpian in the way that we've seen the Biden administration attempt to scapegoat mainstream journalistic news organizations, but it's with a softer touch. Because they're often trying to frame the media as entitled or pushy or being anti-Biden. Is it anti-Biden to ask questions? I don't know. Anyways, I also feel like partisans have enabled it. Not too long ago, A.G. Sulzberger, the publisher of the New York Times, did an interview where he said there are lots of people who think that it is the Times' responsibility to make sure Donald Trump does not get elected. That's not true. And lots of partisans lost their shit. I saw lots of people who I think are smart and thoughtful lose their shit because the publisher of the New York Times said that it is not his responsibility to make sure Joe Biden gets elected. That's the Biden administration's responsibility. That is a campaign responsibility. We do not have state media. Okay. So, who do I blame for this? I blame Biden. I blame the White House. I blame his family. I blame his aides. I blame the Democratic Party establishment. We are, to my mind, allegedly, dealing with a long-term, wide-ranging fraud. I saw Mark Halperin, who got caught up in a Me Too scandal and excommunicated from polite society a few years ago. But he was a long-term political journalist, okay? But I did hear him say that with regard to Biden and his condition, we are dealing with a conspiracy of silence. And I would actually take that further. I think we're dealing with a conspiracy to conceal and misrepresent Biden's situation in a way that would deliberately mislead the public and mislead potential voters so that Joe Biden could bogart his way through the primaries. So about that, I'm a big fan of Ested Herndon. He's a journalist at the New York Times, and he hosts this podcast about political campaigns called The Run Up. And the penultimate episode of the podcast is called Democrats Are Panicking About Biden. How did they get here? I encourage y'all to listen to all 30 minutes of it. It's really interesting. And actually, today I listened to the latest episode, and obviously, it was going to be about the debate and the reaction to the debate. It was also really interesting. I want to play a clip of an interview that Ested did with Jamie Harrison, the chair of the Democratic National Committee.
While we were there, we also spoke with the chair of the DNC, Jamie Harrison, and asked repeatedly, do party leaders have any qualms about clearing the path for someone who will be 86 years old at the end of his second term? Poll after poll says the majority of Americans do not want Biden to run for re-election, and it includes the majority of Democrats. How did the actions with the DNC square with that reality?
Listen, a poll is a poll, but what we do know, concrete, is that Joe Biden has delivered for the American people with a very slim majority in both the House and the Senate. So in the end of the day, I hope folks understand, don't bet against Joe Biden.
I understand that. I guess it's not a question about his accomplishments, it's not a question about the midterms.
But that's what you run on.
No, but it's a question about, do you want that person to be the person going forward? Joe Biden would be 82 by the time of 2024. It is very reasonable, and we have talked to voters who like the last 4 years, but still have questions about the next 4 years. My question's about the next 4 years.
But instead, ultimately, people vote for somebody who can deliver for them. Mm-hmm. This man has been delivering for the American people in a way that no president has in recent history. And so he has the record. He intends to run for re-election. We at the DNC are going to make sure that Joe Biden stays in the White House for another 4 years. There is no inkling that he will not be the nominee of our party.
I understand that.
He deserves that.
There's a reason we were asking these questions in early 2023, because it seemed clear at the time that the party was going to effectively shut down a truly open primary process before voters had really started paying attention. And the only person I could find who would speak openly about their concerns with what the party was doing was Biden's former primary challenger, Julian Castro.
That pisses me off so bad. To reiterate, that was Ested talking. Not me doing the Joe Biden girl coughing. That was Ested talking to the head of the DNC in January or February of 2023. Before any campaign had kicked off, a year before any primary, and Jamie Harrison is saying Joe Biden is the Democratic presidential nominee. There is no other option. He deserves it. At that point, you're talking about an 80-year. I think, I don't know how we can engage with that and not ask questions. And I feel for Ested because he really tried. You can hear the exasperation in his voice when he is talking to Jamie Harrison, the chair of the DNC. He is talking to Leah Daughtry, a DNC official. And by the way, I like Leah a lot. I met her when I was in Philadelphia years ago. She agreed to do an interview with me. She seems like a great woman. I did not like her on the record after Ested pushed her about the idea that it's not right for the Democratic National Committee to be a vehicle for consolidating the power of Joe Biden. And one of the ways that they did it was by changing the primary schedule. Yeah, so does it make sense to move South Carolina up? It's fine. I love Negroes. I'm a Southern Black person, okay? It's totally fine. But Leah Daughtry saying to Ested when he asked, isn't there kind of an issue if people think that you're doing this just to clear the path for Joe Biden, to intimidate people out of primarying him? And she goes, and? Bro, come on. Come on. And as Ested was making clear, there were already these real questions about Biden's fitness, about his ability to make it to 2028. They thought that by forcing a Trump versus Biden rematch that they would force our hands. That is not what happened. I I think another thing that I hope that this fiasco will do is encourage those of us who love democracy and freedom and civil rights to reassess our relationship to the Democratic Party and its infrastructure and the way that it has been allowed to move. Because look, maybe that happened because those of us who love democracy and freedom and civil rights are disconnected, right? Maybe they felt completely justified in clearing the path and foreclosing any opportunity for Joe Biden to be primaried because they're the people who show up. They do the organizing, they're the delegates, they're doing the day to day administrative work. But when we get to this point, and it's really scary, people will go back and engage with that stuff and say, what the fuck? So shout out to you, Ested. You really tried. I can hear the exasperation in your voice. He was exasperated talking to Ron Klain, the former chief of staff for Joe Biden. He was trying to press Ron Klain over and over again about, hey, age concerns. What are y'all going to do to address the age concerns? Hey, you see this, right? What are y'all going to do? Ron Klain refused to engage with the question. There was no plan. There was never a plan. Nobody thought it was important to address that huge concern. So I wouldn't go as far as to call that corruption. I just don't know enough about it, but it sure feels like corruption. At the very least, it just feels deeply dishonest. And it really pisses me off that we can talk all day and all night about living in an era of historic distrust of social, political, educational institutions. People just they don't trust college, they don't trust the government. It pisses me off that we can discuss that and people still do things to further fray and fragment that trust. We are at a crossroads in this country, and you're not going to be able to. I was going to say, you're not going to be able to lie your way through it. I don't want to be that accusatory. I'm going to say that transparency is key because it sure looks like the Democratic Party is doing the exact same kind of stuff that we say we hate about the Republican Party. We say we hate the way that the RNC and the Republicans rolled over and coalesced around Trump. I'm not saying that Trump and Biden are the same. They're clearly not. They're clearly not. I am saying that why would you even want to do things that could draw comparison? Whew. And then, after all that scheming and maneuvering, y'all still have the nerve to be losers. After all that, you still did all of this to prop up a loser. All right. So, There is a report in the New York Times. Clearly, my subscription to the New York Times is paid up. That was published June 30th, 2024, titled 48 Hours to Fix a 90-Minute Mess Inside the Biden Camp's Post-Debate Frenzy. In it, Jen Dillon O'Malley, Biden's campaign manager, was reported to have worked overtime to reach out to congressional Democrats and party insiders and to assure them not to worry about a post-debate dip in the polls. Now, here is why that is stupid. We have acknowledged over and over again that the only reason why Joe Biden in his current state pushed for an early debate was because he was behind in the polls. So it makes complete and perfect sense that if after the debate that Biden pushed for, he was placed further behind, people would freak the fuck out. In a memo, O'Malley said, if we do see changes in polling in the coming weeks, it will not be the first time that overblown media narratives have driven temporary dips in the polls. I'm disgusted because they are coalescing around lies. After the debate, when Biden had that hoarse voice, the idea was, oh, he has a cold. Okay. And then shortly after that, well, then the next day he came out and the cold was gone. All right. Strong voice is back. Color is back in the face. He's up and at him. Oh, okay. But then they abandoned the cold. He has subsequently done these fundraisers before reaching out to congressional Democrats or really explaining what was going on. He's done these fundraisers and he said, "Oh, I'm just so tired. I'm sleepy. I am zigzagging across the world. I've been back and forth to Europe a couple of times right before that debate." Well, one, that's the job of the president. So I'm sorry you had to do your job. But two, that's a lie. It's just a lie. After coming back to the United States from Europe, Joe Biden convalesced for 2 days. He rested for 2 days. And then there were 6 days of debate prep at Camp David. So if Joe Biden is now telling us that it takes him 8 days to get himself together after flying from Europe, again, maybe this is just not the job for you. 6 days of nothing but debate prep. The last video that I wanted to play was something else that came across my desk shortly after the debate.
And here's the reality. If you are going to dump somebody because you don't appreciate how they quote unquote performed in 90 minutes and you're going to discount everything that they've done for almost 50 years in this country, then honestly, it's not him that I'm worried about. I'm worried about the people that said that they had his back. The reality is that we see the Republicans will ride with a dude who's got 34 freaking felony convictions and over 50 more counts pending against him. People need to decide that they are going to choose themselves. And if they vote for Donald Trump, God bless us all, because he is only choosing him. That is all he's ever done. That's what he's going to continue to do. And to reward somebody for standing up there, spewing lies and spewing nonsense is ridiculous. You don't have to be in love with the president, but you should be in love with yourself and say, I deserve more of democracy. I deserve more as relates to my bodily autonomy. I deserve more as it relates to economic opportunities. The only person that even answered one economic question was Donald Trump. I'm sorry. I'm just as crazy this morning. was Joe Biden. Donald Trump wouldn't answer anything about the economy. Now, if people say the number one issue they have is the economy, you would think that they would at least say, well, he didn't answer anything about childcare. He didn't answer anything about making sure that there's more economic opportunities for black folk. He didn't answer anything on the economy. So why people think he better at it, I don't even know.
I don't live in Representative Crockett's district. I live adjacent to it. I have heard nothing but great things, positive things, glowing things about her and her ambition and her desire to do great things and her intellect. And I am sure that her heart is in the right place. But y'all can't. I've heard so many people outraged at the moderators. It was the moderators. The moderators should have been fact checking. An engaged, skilled debater can do the fact checking. Y'all mad at Dana Bash when the candidate is supposed to say, you're lying. The candidate is supposed to say, that is a lie. And this is what I have done. And this is what I plan to do in the future. Yes, Donald Trump is a liar. Yeah. But he looks alive when he lies, and people respond to that. And y'all have got to meet voters where they are. Y'all have got to meet the electorate where they are. If y'all know that that's what the electorate responds to, then why are we talking about the last 50 years when really, as Stead Herndon said in his great podcast, really voters are thinking about the future? I do not like that repeatedly we see Democrats coming out to defend Joe Biden and they say, look at what he's done in the past. Look at his resume. Who deserves it more? Who has done more? He deserves it. Representative Crockett talking about, look at, they're riding with him. I'm not riding with anybody. I don't know Joe Biden. Joe Biden is not my uncle. Joe Biden is not my grandpa. I'm not riding with him. I'm riding with him as far as he can take me and my policy priorities. And I'm getting off right the fuck where he can't take me further. That's politics. My participation in electoral politics is not an absolute expression of my political goals or my political identity. Politics is a tool. Okay? These are tools, these are vehicles to get where you're trying to go. If it's broke down, you catch a different bus. Don't try to convince us to stay on the broke down bus because there's something in it for you. And one of the reasons why I don't hold that stuff against Representative Crockett is because as I've been learning more and more about how petty and punitive Biden and the Biden White House is, I understand why people would feel compelled to come out and say that kind of stuff. But her aims and my aims are not aligned. So, anyways, I can make peace with it. I understand where she's trying to go and what she's trying to do. Unfortunately, that is incompatible with what the rest of us need right now. And then we have the Democratic Party stands. So Representative Crockett is getting a check. She is vying for status and position in Congress. That's a thing. But the normies who treat electoral politics like it's a sports game, the normies who treat electeds like celebrities, they've also done some damage here. I think that a normie Democratic stan or a fanatic, their unwillingness to engage with the empirical realities of where Joe Biden stands stems from over identifying with being a Joe Biden voter. Capital J, capital B, capital V. Your identity is too wrapped up in being a Democrat or too wrapped up in being a Joe Biden voter. There is a real fear. That fear is understandable. We do not want the alternative. We do not want Project 2025. We do not want a Supreme Court that has 9 conservative justices. We do not want that. We do not want a Republican dominated judiciary. We do not want the reversal of equity, legal equity statutes in the United States. Like, we don't want that. But partisans are at this point doing everything that they can to demonstrate that they're just as bad as the Trumpers. I am going to go off on this for oh, hello? Can you hear it? Oh, what the heck happened? Girl, I was going off. Oh, I was doing so good. You know what? I feel like I accidentally bumped it. Oh, I accidentally touched the mute button. I love this. Oh, okay. I accidentally touched the mute button, y'all. Okay. I don't even know what I was talking about. Baby, that was good though. I'll have to go back in the thing. Crap. What was I talking about? Emmanuel Macron. Oh, okay. So we'll just go back. I act like I don't have notes. Okay. So let me go back. One of the sickest things about the last 18 months for me has been how the Democratic Party stands and the normies have weaponized the language of social justice to gaslight those of us who can use our eyes and who can look at the data about how bad of a candidate Joe Biden is. I'm sure everything you said was a bar. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. But good. This is good because I got my first takeout. I have been so disgusted by how people who I think generally have good politics, I think that their hearts are in the right place, but they have consistently used the language of social justice, ideas about ableism and ageism to make sure that those of us who expressed any kind of concern were made to feel silly and stupid. It was a systematic gaslighting when we used our eyes or used engagement with the actual data to point out, hey, this is not good. This person is not going to make it. Joe Biden has been trailing Trump consistently in the polls for months. And you see that, and instead of saying, hey, maybe the people who have some questions are making some real points, you thought that you could stamp it out. That is not what happened. Wantonly engaging ideas that are supposed to be for protecting the most marginalized and invisibilized people in our society. Wait, when we're talking about ageism and ableism, we are talking about people who have been systematically disenfranchised. You use that, and I'm talking about the Democratic Party stands, used that in order to harden institutional consensus via coercion around the most powerful man in the country. Right? The problem I have is y'all act like those of us who have for many months said, hey, this doesn't look like it's going great. Y'all act like we don't have any skin in the game. I have a little pocket of privilege, but I'm still a negress. I have a uterus. I'm black. I have friends and family. I live in the South. I have 11-year-old nieces. I have a black male partner. But beyond that, I am deeply invested in justice. I don't want to descend quickly into fascism. That's not my goal. There is something so truly disgusting to me, and I'm sorry if you feel hit by this. I'm so sorry. There is something so truly disgusting to me when people are literally saying, "Hey, I'm concerned. I have fear that the Democratic Party stands wagging up, rally around to shout down, coerce, belittle, minimize, gaslight." That is so fucked up. First of all, that is not how you build power. That's not how you build coalition. And now look where we are. People have said, oh, well, that's just politics. It's just politics. Politics is politics. Well, politics blew up in our fucking faces. So now what? Now, what are we going to do? Now, I'm not saying that all is lost. I'm not saying that. I'm saying we're in a really bad fucking position. And it didn't have to be this way. So when the gaslighting didn't work, we got the whataboutism. Well, Trump is old too. Well, Trump lies. Well, Trump has this. It's like, come on now. Come on. There has to be some real institutional change at the Democratic National Committee. One of the reasons why there is real conversation about replacing Biden or compelling Joe Biden to withdraw from the race is because the really moneyed people have come out against him. I saw Reed Hastings, who is a big Democratic donor, say Joe Biden needs to withdraw. There are all of these anonymous sources saying the hedge fund people, the super PAC people are saying Biden needs to withdraw. But what happened in the infrastructure that got us here? I think those of us who care about freedom and rights and democracy, I understand the people who want to completely divest. But I think some of us do need to tap in. Tap in. Okay. I also want to say that I am not a Girl Scout. I understand that there will be some measure of corruption in major party politics. It's baked into the cake. That's the system we have. All I am saying is that if you're going to do all of that maneuvering, please don't do it in a way that works in opposition to pursuing your political goals. Politics is for power. Politics is not for feel good, happy moments. Politics is not for rooting your identity. If you're not getting closer to empowering the communities that you're invested in, the communities that you belong to, what are you doing? Oh my gosh, somebody give me $50? What's going on, you guys? Thank you, Kat Bloomfield. That was a bar, donating for all of us negresses and our existential dread. Yeah. I simultaneously feel enormous pity and disdain for the Democratic Party stance because the way people engaged me, the way that I've seen people engage other people, and by the way, I can take it. I'm a public person. I'm a professional public person. I can take it. I've gotten dragged for nonsense. So getting dragged over saying Joe Biden should not be the nominee, that's nothing. But seeing people do it, normies do it to each other, online, offline, old people going back and forth on Facebook statuses. It's like, come on. What's going on? Okay, so that was all I have on the Democratic Party stance. The last people that I need to address in my burn book, the Biden family, starting with Jill Biden. I am utterly disgusted with the way that the Biden family allegedly, reportedly, has propped Joe Biden up, enabled this charade to continue. There was a report in the Associated Press that said that after the debate, the Bidens met up at Camp David for a photo shoot with Annie Leibovitz, and he consulted everybody close to him, Hunter Biden, Dr. Joe Biden, his sister Valerie, and asked them what he should do. And they said to keep going, keep fighting. Again, there's no way they're not seeing what we're seeing. Friendly reminder that even if you tap out of the presidential race, don't ignore the people representing your city and state. Your vote really does matter. Ooh, okay. So I want to say that when I say tap in, tap out, I am never talking about not voting. Not voting to me is not an option. Voting is honestly the least you can do. When I say that I no longer attach voting to be an absolute, when I say I no longer think of voting as an absolute or significant expression of my political ideas, I really mean that. Voting is just a thing that I do because my life and the lives of everybody in my community and everybody I care about and all of the issues that I'm deeply invested in, those things are impacted by voting. You can try to opt out of the system, but the system is not opting out on you. Okay? Right? Like we actually have to be, oh, don't make me go off on this. Okay? It's fine to not, you don't want to work within the system. The system is working on you and everybody you care about and everybody you care for and every community you're a part of. It feels good to say, I'm not going to participate. But in actuality, like, okay, in actuality, do masses of people who believe in a thing extracting themselves from completely from a system? I'm not saying we gotta get Joe Biden off this ticket, right? Does that get you closer to your goal or further away from your goal? Does it get you closer to your political goals and political aims or further away from your political goals and political aims? Because the people who wanted to reverse Roe v. Wade didn't say fuck politics, you know? You don't have to show up to the rallies. You don't have to campaign every, like, that's not what I'm saying. When I say tap out or tap in, I'm actually really talking about whether or not people want to go deeper than just showing up to the polls for 5 minutes or sending in an absentee ballot, cuz to me that's nothing. I'm sorry, it's nothing. I think even a debate about casting a vote like it's really taking stuff out of you, like, please, please be real. Please be real. Please be real. Thoughts on the Nina Turner op-ed in Newsweek? I have not read it. But I will go back and read it. As I said, I might be using this word wrong, but the word that's coming to mind is utilitarian approach to electoral politics. It's one little thing. I'm not deeply invested in the well-being or the future of Joe Biden because it's one little thing. Kamala can laugh her way back to California, okay? Not deeply invested in her. Don't know that lady. That lady is not my aunt. I'm actually at a point where I saw something where I know that people are like, you can't replace Joe Biden with another white man. oh, I'm going to be so mad if they replace him with a white man, or they can't replace Joe Biden with Gretchen Whitmer because she's a girl. I want to win. When I say politics is for power, I mean, I don't have any electoral idealism. Somebody said in my Instagram DMs, how can you possibly look up to Joe Biden? I don't. When I was going to vote for Joe Biden, it wasn't because I'm looking up to him. No, I don't look up to or find any presidents to be aspirational. They have power in a system that has a lot of impact on people's lives. That's it. So you work to empower the people. You work to empower the people who are going to have the capacity to impact your life. That's it. And by work to empower, I mean cast a vote. Spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Unless, of course, you live in a marginalized, probably Black district where they don't have enough polling places, so you have to stand in line. That's another conversation about structural racism. But like this idea of like, and I think that I'm 35 years old. I was 18 years old when Barack Obama got elected. Hope, change, the future. It's going to be so bright. No, I don't know. I know Keir Starmer, the head of the Labour Party in the UK, his thing is change. Change. Like, no. Is this going to get me closer to the outcomes I desire, or is it going to get me further away? We got to be real pragmatic about this, be real realistic about it. There's no pie in the sky. I would I would ideally like to be very enthusiastic about a winner. But at the end of the day, I want a winner. The end. And if you're not putting up a winner, don't talk to me. I don't want a moral victory. That doesn't do anything for me. People who love freedom and civil rights and democracy need to fucking win. And that's how I feel about that. Whew. Okay. Oh, the Biden family. The Biden family. I'm really disgusted with Joe Biden. People who say that they love this country, that they love America, they are actively doing things to sabotage this country and make sure that we are in a place that is going to take literally generations to recover from. Would work wonders for down ballot voting and voting measures. Gen Z pulling resources to find the most tangible and positive change across the country. Yes. What happened to the Gen Zers who had brought the Trump rally tickets only for him to have 0 people in the stands? Could they not pool their resources to look for the most progressive people for re-election across the country? That's interesting. Okay. Yeah. So Jill Biden is standing strong. Because I am not a misogynist and I am anti-misogyny, I have been grossed out by some of the takes about Jill Biden. I think I saw Bill Ackman on Twitter say, oh, she's just doing this because she doesn't want to give up the high life. And if she leaves the White House, she will not be the center of it. Like, come on. Bill Ackman, honestly, Bill Ackman ain't been right since his wife got exposed for being a plagiarist. But that's neither here nor there. I think Jill Biden is a woman who has been writing for her man since she was 26 years old. And that is the only thing that she knows. I think Joe Biden is somebody who exists in a very insular world with the same people, and he exists in a feedback loop and gets the same, honestly, not great advice. And so that's why we're stuck here. And I actually kind of understand this idea. Look, we got to be honest. Joe Biden's withdrawal from this race will bring some measure of familial disgrace on the Bidens. It will. Okay. What's that got to do with me? Y'all earned that disgrace. Anybody who has seen Joe Biden's deterioration or who has looked at the polls and continued to encourage him and enable him in his delusions, you earned that disgrace. This whole fiasco, no matter how it turns out, is not going to be in the first paragraph of Joe Biden's obituary, but it's going to be in the second or third for sure. For sure. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. This has left a stain. The politicians who play the game, play the game. Whatever veneer they put on, prop up, is for optics. It's often been the same thing. Diversity is great, but diversity for who? In the Oval Office? Yeah. Yeah. Um, I don't. I, I saw, not that I give Meghan McCain too much of anything, but I did think it was interesting that Meghan McCain, her father died of glioblastoma, the same thing my father died from. There is something about, oh, this is another thing that I have been thinking about. There is something about military people and the aggressive brain cancers. My father was in the Air Force. He died of an aggressive brain cancer. Beau Biden, aggressive brain cancer. Well, John McCain he was old, so he was gonna get something. But they need to be doing some studies on that. That's just a random aside. Sorry, that's a random aside. Meghan McCain was talking about how, because she was so deeply invested in protecting her father's legacy and the image of her father, that when he was experiencing cognitive decline, dementia, because of his brain cancer, that they worked really, really hard to insulate him, to make sure that the image of John McCain, however you feel about him, that was not marred by people speculating and ridiculing. Anyone who has insulated Joe Biden from the truth has helped to destroy his legacy, point blank, period. That's not my problem. That is not the American people's problem. That is not the problem of people who love freedom and rights and democracy. I want to end this by saying I cannot believe how many times I've heard people say that Joe Biden deserves the presidency, that he has worked for it, that it's his right, it's his birthright, it's the natural outcome for being in congressional politics or whatever since 1972 when he won his first Senate race or whatever. Like, no. If we want to talk about entitlement, that is the peak of entitlement. Jill Biden said at a recent fundraiser, Joe isn't just the right person for the job, he's the only person for the job. Excuse me? Excuse me? No. No. There are other people who can do the job. And those people, I was going to get ableist on y'all. I'm refraining from getting too ableist. We don't have to take it there. We don't have to take it there. Take it there. But I cannot think of a more corrosive kind of sentiment. We need to be demanding. We need to be demanding from our Congress people. They need to come out and say something. This cannot be an environment where Joe Biden just tries to ride it out until August. The clock is ticking. There is still time. Joe Biden is not officially the nominee. He's the only person on life support for the job. I am not going to officially endorse that statement, but all is not lost. As I mentioned, there is new polling, leaked polling, that says that in head-to-head matchups, the younger politicians, the younger executives, even a Kamala Harris does better against Trump than Joe Biden is doing right now. And over the next couple of weeks, I am sure there's going to be more data that comes out. There's going to be more polling. And we cannot be comfortable with the Biden administration just trying to ignore the data, ignore the information, ignore the writing on the wall. That cannot, if you're saying that we're voting to protect democracy, then fucking protect it. Where is the Project 2025 for Democrats? Girl, they're too busy trying to ram Joe Biden down our throats. And I want to underscore, the problem is not age. The problem is not, even though I don't believe in gerontocracy, I do legitimately think that gerontocracy is bad. I saw something from the Bureau of Labor Statistics that says only 5% of people over 80 have any job. So why does somebody over 80 need to be president? I'm ageist. It's whatever. But that being said, I don't think every politician over 80 is stumbling and bubbling and ineffective. I don't think that if you talk to Bernie Sanders, he seems fine. Anthony Fauci is 83 and he's been on a book tour. He looks great. He sounds great. Nancy Pelosi, she seems fine. Now, do I want any of those people to be president? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But they're doing differently than Joe Biden. The issue is, how does your age and the public perception of your age and ability and the apparent decline of your abilities hamper the way that you can do your job? There's only two options. You're either going to win or you're going to lose. My hot take is Democrats on a national scale have coasted on, but look at how bad the other side is while profiteering and doing nothing. The other side is really bad, but is that all? Is that the campaign? No one deserves a position that reeks of white privilege with the soupçon of nepotism. People who serve should be in the dance halls of power, but lobbyists are the best bouncers. Yeah. So I anticipate we're going to see more data. We're going to see more leaks because every day it's surreal. I have push alerts, push notifications for the New York Times on my phone right now. We're in a real life drama. Unfortunately, the end of this drama is not Netflix virality. The end of this drama is not Emmys. The end of this drama is the near total eradication of rights for every marginalized group in the country. The end of this drama is suppressed wages for low income people. The end of this drama is a complete decimation of environmental protections, a reversal of any work that's been done the last 4 years to have progressive climate policy. It's it's just really bad. It's just really bad. Um oh, I still have some more thoughts here. I have more notes. um My other note is nobody in Biden's orbit has prioritized defeating Donald Trump. They have prioritized Joe Biden's ego because for more than a year, there has been almost no indication that he could come out on top against Donald Trump. There have been a few bright spots, but those bright spots have been short lived. I have had a problem with any discourse over the last 8 years that even intimated that a Donald Trump presidency was inevitable. There is a rise of fascism all across the globe. There is a rightward lean, a rightward turn in all kinds of quote unquote developed nations. But the idea that a Bolsonaro is inevitable or a Boris Johnson is inevitable, a Rishi Sunak is inevitable, a Donald Trump is inevitable, no. Oh, I don't want to get into my European politics bag, but if you look at the kind of this is real neoliberalism, not fake neoliberalism, but the kind of policies that Emmanuel Macron has championed in France, it makes perfect sense that they would be at this moment on the verge of having a far right party that has hundreds of seats in the parliament because centrist policies, austerity policies lead people to the extreme. Oh, I don't want to. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I'm not trying to go off on here. I can't go off on this, but I said all this to say that we're only at a point where we have experienced 4 years of Donald Trump and all of the chaos that has wrought because in 2016, he faced a historically unpopular candidate, and we can talk about misogyny, we can talk about whatever. The fact of the matter is, Hillary Clinton was historically unpopular. She knew that going into the race. There have never been two less popular candidates than Trump versus Clinton. We've actually bested that now. Okay? In 2024, there have never been two less popular candidates than Biden versus Trump. I looked this up. It's the favorability ratings have never been like this. So the idea that this is just the natural outcome or we couldn't help it or we're just going with the tides of the world. No. So many decisions have got us here. And the Democrats should be utterly disgraced and humiliated by the prospect of going 1-3 to Trump. Every insider, every stan, because at this point, the race is barely competitive. And shout out to the Biden administration for their good policy. There's been lots of good policy. It's time to move on. We got to make a change. People are asking me, are we going for Kamala? Kamala is the easiest. Oh, I didn't say this. Okay. There is no way for the Democratic National Committee to force Joe Biden off the ticket at this point. Again, I have so many links down below. I'm going to insert more links. The only way forward is for Joe Biden to withdraw from the race. Kamala becomes the obvious person to move up to the top of the ticket, but I'm going to be honest with ya. Kamala is still not popular enough for my liking. I am not sure that Kamala Harris can carry a ticket. I know that that puts her in a really bad place. I know. Now, if it's keep Joe Biden at the top or move Kamala up, we move Kamala up. I'm saying ideally, I know this is not good for the Black women. I'm sorry. Biden and Harris would withdraw together. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying there are stronger presidential candidates. And Harris would be fine. Ooh, okay. So can I let me going off my notes, but I guess since we're at the end, I can go off my notes and be extemporaneous. The problem with Kamala Harris is that she was trying to, in 2020, run so far away from being the top cop, being the prosecutor, that she was trying to fit herself into a mold that she just doesn't fit into. Kamala Harris is a prosecuting ass. I'm not going to call her a B word, but that's a prosecuting ass lady. She's hard line, she's hardcore, she's tough on crime, she's the top cop. It did not benefit her to embrace her natural identity in 2020. So she had to get squeezed. She had to get squeezed into a mold that benefited the ticket in 2020, that aligned with all of the fake posturing that people were doing about George Floyd and racial equity. But that's not her. I know Kamala is in her residence every day watching Judge Mathis and Judge Judy like, lock them up, like, lock them up. I'm sure she's just itching to send people back to that's her. So she didn't get an opportunity. I'm joking, but I'm serious. Okay. She has not had the opportunity to embody her natural posture. And so it comes off like she's an airhead. But we know she's not. She couldn't possibly be. She's trying to keep it all in. And that has really weakened her position. Yeah. Yeah, Kamala is in the residence watching cops like, oh, the good old days. Bad boys. What you gonna do? Like, But she needed to represent something that doesn't quite align with her politics. So anyways, any And we're in an that's the other thing about Kamala. We are also in an anti-DEI mood. By we, I mean the United States. There's the anti-DEI backlash and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's a hard spot. I know it's a hard spot, but I don't think Kamala Harris is a winner. I don't care about representation. I don't care about moral victories. I don't care about, oh, my nieces need to grow up in a world where they see a mixed woman, aka as president. Girl, I don't care. I don't care. Oh, shout out to Kwamba. I've never seen this before. The way that it shows up there. Okay. Anyways, right now we're being held hostage by Joe Biden's ego and the Democratic Party's obsequious ineptitude. I pray that we can shake ourselves loose. Country, thou art loosed. Party, thou art loosed. We can do better. The last thing I want to say about this is I did see a leaked video of Donald Trump on a golf course talking to somebody saying, "Oh, I got him to quit. He's quitting because of me." I do not believe for 1 second that that stuff was leaked without Donald Trump's knowledge or that he didn't have a hand in it. In my new reading and learning about Joe Biden and who he is and how he operates, I absolutely believe that Donald Trump or somebody associated with the Trump campaign made sure that that video of him gloating about forcing Biden out of the race was made public because they expected to inspire Joe Biden to double down and to dig in his heels and refuse to exit the race because he is being personally taunted by Donald Trump. It seems to me that a lot of people are moving very carefully so that Joe Biden does not move rebelliously. I read something about how that's why Obama came out so quickly, that's why Clinton came out so quickly, because Joe Biden holds grudges. And if he feels like people are not supporting him, if he feels like people are trying to count him out, he becomes very defiant and he will make it up in his mind that he will not allow them to get the best of him. So that makes me concerned. That makes me concerned. Yes, Donald Trump is a stunt queen. Yes, yes, yes. So we want Kamala to hand over millions. Only she can use the fundraising money. Yes, I understand. Yeah, I do want her to hand over millions. Yeah, I do. I do. I want I want the smart people who are real pollsters and not me who's just a person who knows how to read. I want those people to look at the landscape and tell us who can win. And if it's not Kamala, it's not Kamala. I'm so sorry. She will be fine. Okay, anything else? I'm just looking at the comments just to see if I missed anything. I told anyone who listened to get the most out of the DEI pandering that companies government pushed forward while we still could. It was guaranteed to dry up because most used it as a trend. Yeah. I mean, look, maybe this is just something 35-year-old Kimberly understands very, very well. Multinational corporations cannot be deeply invested in justice. They literally cannot be. Okay? So, did I get my YouTube checks? I sure did. Did I get my multiple YouTube checks? I sure did. Was it a good time? Sure was. It was a great time. But I am not deluded. I'm not delusional. Any multinational corporation that cuts me a DEI check is not indefinitely committed to transforming society in a way that benefits any community that I'm a part of or any community that I care about. They have shareholders to answer to, and they have to sit in front of congressional committees and defend their platforms and policies and algorithms. The DEI checks are a means to an end. And that is what it is. Okay. Okay, what are y'all are arguing about something. If they switch candidates now, would the new person be on the ticket everywhere or would they be a write-in in some places? Anyone know? If they switch candidates now, so the Democratic presidential ticket is not formally ratified, is not formally voted on until the DNC in August. And so after that happens, that's how you can ensure that they appear on the ticket everywhere. That's why if we're making moves, we have to make moves quickly. The other little snag is that in order to be on the ballot in Ohio, they have to be submitted before the actual DNC vote in August. So that's why the party is talking about doing an online roll call vote or something like that before the actual physical convention. So that's we gotta get this show on the road. You guys, okay. So we know, okay. So after the reason why, okay, I don't have time to go through what happened in 68, but basically go back to when I was talking about LBJ having approval ratings in the 30s. He was not elected. He became president after there was an assassination. Y'all know the drill. During his presidency, the Vietnam War broke out. It was a whole big thing. He decided in March of 1968 that he was not going to run for president. They The Democratic Party went into the summer. It was an open convention. It was crazy. It was chaos. All of these things happened. RFK was assassinated. It was like this whole big thing during the process, okay? But after that, the Democratic National Committee instituted new rules, and that's how we have the rules that we have now about pledged delegates. And that's why after the primaries, people can't just do whatever they want. Anything that happens now moving forward in the Democratic Party has to be very orderly. It's not everybody for themselves. It can't be a lot of infighting. The pledged delegates can't just say, I'm not voting for Biden anymore. There's a lot of guardrails. There's a lot of restrictions. And again, none of this can happen without Joe Biden coming to us humbly and saying, I've consulted with Hunter and Jill and my granddaughters, and I've decided that it's best for the country that I do not move forward with this campaign. The least chaotic thing after that is Kamala Harris becoming the top of the ticket. That's the least chaotic thing. But things can happen. Okay. Yeah, Hunter Biden, I don't even know. Ooh, but okay, I'll end on this. Okay, sorry. Now I'm getting distracted. This is what I will officially end on. This is some political tea. The Bidens and the Obamas used to be really close. Remember how Barack Obama surprised Joe Biden by giving him the Presidential Medal of Honor with distinction, which is so rare. Nobody does that. And Obama called Biden his brother, and Joe Biden cried and all of that. And it was a whole thing. Well, now they have beef. Joe Biden is stubborn and he is egotistical, and he feels really slighted that the Obamas and the party put Clinton ahead of him in 2016. Moreover, Michelle Obama has beef with the Bidens. This is from Axios. Y'all log on to Axios. There was a report in Axios that Michelle Obama has beef with the Bidens because Hunter Biden went through a messy divorce with one of Michelle Obama's close friends, Kathleen Buell. And after that divorce, the Bidens treated allegedly Kathleen Buell horribly. And Michelle Obama, being a real girl's girl, a real ride or die, said, oh, y'all are on some bullshit, and she does not mess with them anymore. That's what Axios said. And honestly, I love Michelle Obama for that. Because I feel like if you're, I won't call him a crackhead because that's insensitive, but if your son, who you know has taken everybody through the ringer and has potentially destroyed so many people's lives, including his ex-wife and his children, and you know that he's caused all this trauma, and then he moves on and gets somebody else pregnant and gets in all of this legal trouble and does all of this ethically shady stuff, and then you turn your back on the ex-wife who was holding it down, who has kept all of the secrets. Anyways, that's why the Bidens, I don't know, a sketchy family, allegedly. An allegedly very sketchy family. Okay, yes, I'm sorry. Do not use the verbiage crackhead. Hunter Biden had an untreated drug addiction. Yeah. It's inappropriate to call people crackheads in 2024. Ooh, it's getting late. As I mentioned before, I need to go. COVID is real. I'm in my house right now because COVID is real. And that's all I can say about that. Y'all protect yourselves, stay safe, get tested. I will see you guys next time. Bye.